Is everybody back yet?
I think so. Oh no, we only have 17. There's like 40 people.
Yeah.
This is a big class.
Zoom's working so hard to bring them back
to
the main room.
We got 30 coming up. Here we go. All right. Okay. All right. I think all our students are back. Students, welcome. I hope that your day at class was good. I'm here to hand it over to Brianna, who has our guest speaker lined up. So, Brianna?
Sure. I'm just going to quickly actually hand it over to Aviva. I've already given you guys a quick intro to who she is, and I know she has a lot to say, so I don't really want to take up a lot of time. So if you just want to take it away, Aviva.
Thanks for having me, Brianna, Jesse. It's really great to meet the class virtually. I am in awe of engineers, and I've heard a little bit about the projects you're working on this summer, and I think it's fabulous what you're doing and managing to get accomplished in this very interesting world that we're in now. We certainly need a lot of people in science and technology out there, and I think that in terms of the college essay, which is what I'm going to talk about today, you're going to have a lot to share with people about who you are, what you want, and how you can really contribute to the world. So I'm excited to be working with you today. So as Brianna mentioned, my name is Dr. Aviva Legatt. I'm the founder and elite admissions expert of Ivy Insight. And just want to share a little bit of, just kind of set the stage for where we're going with this material, and then I'll provide a little bit of a longer intro of who I am. So we're out of engineering, we're into college essays now. So you're in the right place if you want to understand how admissions officers will review your essay. So I am going to talk from my experience about how these essays, why these essays matter, and how you will be evaluated when you apply. You perhaps want to go to one of these colleges and you want to know how to select the right story for the colleges of your choosing. And you want some tips on the writing process. So I'm going to give you a little bit intro about myself and why this matters to me. So this is me when I was closer to your age, about 17 years old. I'm here with my best friend, Anne, and I'm very stressed out about my college process. I went to a very high achieving high school, and everybody there was obsessed with college. And I was pretty much on my own to apply. What ended up happening was I got pneumonia on the way to going to my applications. Luckily, there was no COVID, but pneumonia I would not recommend getting when you're on your way to your college application. So I got it in October, which was the month before applications were due. I was really fixated on my top choice college, which was NYU at the time. And luckily, I did end up getting in, but what I took away from the experience was really more around how I could help people in this process, do it better than I did, and be smarter about it, because it is such a transformative time that you're in to make these decisions. And I've devoted my career to helping people make better and more mindful choices than I did. So this is just a little bit about me. I'm going to go through this quick because we don't have a lot of time, but this is me graduating from NYU with my husband, Joel. This is us on my graduation day right in front of Madison Square Garden, which is where we had our ceremony. And then I did take a different path at NYU. I studied music business, and I thought I would go into the entertainment industry. But while I was there, I realized that there was this field called higher education that I could go into. And it really resonated again with my college process, this really transformative and difficult experience for me. And I wanted to move away from music business by the end. And I decided to go work at the Wharton School, where I was Senior Associate Director of Admissions. And there I had a chance to evaluate and select students for the freshman and transfer classes and oversee a pre-college program called Leadership in the Business World. So this is me at that program with my co-instructor at the Tesla factory. Lots of fun. I'm sure you all would get a kick out of the cars there. We also got to do a lot of great leadership development activities at Wharton, and this is one experience I had working with the fire department of New York. I went through the actual firefighter training, which was an amazing experience. So through these kinds of opportunities, I had a chance to see how high-performing leaders are made and are cultivated in this high-achieving, high-performing environment. So I came to a crossroads. I was studying for my doctorate in higher ed, and I was working at Wharton, and I had a kind of a crossroads where I could have stayed in my position or I moved forward. So I decided to take this pipe dream I had about my own college process, take my admissions experience, take all my leadership experience, and become your college admissions expert. So today I'm fortunate to found my company, Ivy Insight. I was named a trustworthy expert by New York Times after the college admissions scandal broke, and I write for Forbes, so I've been recognized there as well. So I love writing, and I have a book coming out next year called Get Real and Get In, which is with St. Martin's Press. So going into the admissions process and a little bit about how the essay would be considered here. So every college that you're applying to has their own mission and what they want to get accomplished in terms of priorities. So you as the applicant are, if we're looking in this in kind of a more binary way. So when we think about holistic admission, it sounds very flowery, but if we really break it down to a few components, it's, your metrics, your numbers. What did you do on your grades and your tests? If you don't have tests, then what did you do on your grades? Your attributes, so the things about you that you can't change, and the experiences that you're bringing with you as a young person, both in terms of extracurricular and the personal side as well. So it's a very short window that you have to stand out. It's 8 minutes or less. So you really have to make the essay and every piece of your application count because you really don't have a lot of time to make an impression. So when you're thinking about a college essay, it's a piece of information about you, but it also has to be engaging in some way. And this is just a little bit about what's kind of important. GPA test scores can still be important, but those numbers, depending on, if you go to a high achieving place and everybody's separated by, 10th of a point, 100th of a point, that's not really the make or break factor, really. It's your attributes and your experiences, what I mentioned in the holistic admission model, which in this case demonstrates what you've done and what you're capable of. And that's what colleges are wanting to know. What are you capable of? How will you contribute? What have you managed to accomplish? How have you proven yourself so far? And the nice thing about the Coalition Common Application essay, which is also called a personal statement or also called a college essay, is that it's an opportunity for you to demonstrate who you are and what you have to offer. So it's not just about bragging about the great things that you've done with BlueStamp engineering and your project. It's really about what makes you tick and what have been experiences that have been character building, character shaping that support you in achieving your goals. So this is an opportunity, if you haven't connected with an admissions officer, for that person to really meet you and get to know you a little bit better through this essay. So we have so I'm calling this the College Essay Challenge because this is a fun but also a very practical way for you to start your essay or to work on an essay that you might already have in mind or in store. So I'm gonna come back tomorrow to review some of the essays that you're going to be working on, and we're going to do kind of a mini prompt for this challenge. So the idea behind having a prompt is just a chance for you to free write, for you not to be bound by any particular method or outline, but just took a few questions that give you some food for thought. So you can take a look at this prompt, screenshot them, and figure out what you might like to write about just for this challenge. So then we're gonna take a few minutes to free write. So I wanna put the prompts up here, and I wanna ask you to take out a journal, a piece of paper, not necessarily a laptop, although a laptop is a great tool. And some of you may find laptops are easier for you because you're a tech person. I find being a more creative person, a more literary person, it's actually a lot easier to write on paper because you can get your thoughts out without all distractions of our videos and our screens. So I'm gonna pull up my timer right now, and I'm gonna time you for 3 minutes to write on one of these prompts. So here we go. 3 minutes are on the clock. We've got 1 minute left to write. All right, you can finish up your last sentence. Thank you for diving into this challenge. I normally would do this session over a little bit of a longer time, so I wanted to make sure I met that. We really are out of time. Wanted to make sure I met the time limits of your session. So I encourage you after tonight. So my recommendation, and I'll give you some more recommendations for the essay, would be whatever you wrote on tonight, take another 15 to 20 minutes to finish up your free writing. Whatever you've started to work on, it can only help you figure out what you're ultimately going to end up doing for your essay. And when we come back together tomorrow, I'll give you some more information on how you can structure the essay. The goal of this activity was really to give you that start. When you free write, you really have the opportunity to get creative. So you might have sat there for a minute and then you started thinking about what would you write about, and then you just started writing. And once you had that idea, you kept going, or maybe you got the idea at the last minute, or maybe you were able to just step off and write. Or maybe you didn't think about anything at all. Maybe you couldn't write anything, and that's fine too. But we took this quiet moment to think, to write, to reflect on one of these questions that could help us with our college essays ultimately. So I thank you for diving right into the challenge. So tonight, when you're reviewing your free writing, I'm giving you some additional tips on how you can shape it to help yourself write the most compelling story possible. So think about how you've discussed your experience. Has it been vivid and memorable? And was the experience transformative in some way? We don't necessarily want to focus this essay on something like you're getting a good grade in a class or achieving a high test score, or we don't want to focus it on the wins. We want to focus it on a personal life story. For example, some students will focus on an intellectual idea that really sparks their curiosity in some way. Other students may talk about research, but it's not about, oh, I got this research published. It's more about the process of learning behind the research. So have you discussed what you've learned? Have you focused on the wins, and have you vividly discussed this experience? And oftentimes I find that when students are first telling a story, they kind of describe the story versus take the reader to the scene. So when you're thinking about expanding on this free writing, think about how you can take the reader to the scene so that they can be on your shoulder wherever you are, rather than look at the story from kind of a bird's eye view where they don't really understand your experience. They just are reading a description of what happened. So make sure it's not a recount of exactly what happened, but you're taking your reader to some kind of scene, a moment in time that would help them to get to know you better. And again, think about what you've learned from the experience and how whatever this experience is relevant or helpful for your college goals. And I'll give you an example you can read afterwards of a student who we critiqued her essay. She got into many of the Ivy Leagues as well as MIT and Stanford. And if you read her essay, you'll see that she described this very minute sort of experience of going to Costco and going through and looking at the aisles in a different way. And then she discussed how that experience applied in other areas of her life and what she took away from that. So that was a really great example of a model that you can use for your essay. And I'll share with you the link of that at the end. So you can also think about the kinds of character traits you're going to be demonstrating in this essay. So here are some character traits that are really valued in college admissions. So, are you curious about different things? Obviously you all are, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this program. So how can you demonstrate that curiosity, that thirst for knowledge through this essay? Perhaps it's a story that shows your independence and individuality, perhaps separate from your community or in line with your community. However you interpret the word community within your own realm. Self-reflective and humble. Are you bragging about, this cool project you did with BlueStamp, or are you talking more about how this project contributed to your overall learning and your overall goals for what you want to accomplish as a student and as a young professional? And then think about, if you do talk about a challenge, thinking about how you can emphasize the triumph from the challenge rather than just the difficult experience itself. I've had students talk about really difficult topics: death, drug addiction. Life is not always pretty, and some of these experiences though can be really defining for people. However, if you do talk about something really serious like that, you have to make sure to focus on how you overcame or what you took away from that experience, rather than get into the nitty-gritty of the challenge itself. And how difficult that was, because then the person unfortunately is just going to be depressed and not know you. They're just going to be like, wow, this is such a sad story, and I don't know how this is relevant to the college application. Finally, contributions to pursuits outside of academics. Again, you don't want to make this essay just about a class you took or one academic experience you had. Make sure you're thinking bigger than just a class or just one project. And then avoid these topics when you're expanding your free writing. So don't put yourself down. Don't oversee failure. So if you got a B instead of an A, I'm sure that was very upsetting, and I'm sorry for your B, but that's not going to be considered a transformative or big failure. So be careful about how you characterize failure and what you might choose to talk about if you're talking about an obstacle. You don't want to show that you're someone who's unwilling to speak up. Like, you don't want to talk about, let's say, for example, current political events, and then just don't get to the part where you talk about your involvement in them or your interpretation of them. So you don't want to be a passerby or a passive person in your own story. You want to be that active narrator, that active voice of change wherever you're coming from this essay, wherever you're coming to this essay from. You don't want to be that person who doesn't have any interest outside of studying. Make sure you talk about a little bit more. If you are a very academic person, again, make it more about the curiosity than about the actual book part of it. You don't want to talk about regrets. You don't want to beg the admissions office to admit you, and so on. A lot of these things are common sense, but definitely worth sharing. So here are just some basic steps to write the essay. You can look at, if you can't think of it, you didn't think of any prompts today, you didn't think of any stories today, think about tonight, what's a formative experience you had in your childhood? Like, for example, my essay back in the day was about getting to audition for a play that was at the college in my town. So I'm from Princeton, New Jersey, and the college was having a play that I wanted to be part of. And I talked a lot about that experience and what it taught me. So think about, do you have a cool experience like that? Do you have a story from an extracurricular activity where you had to, for example, solve a conflict in a team or overcome administrative barriers, something like that? You can think about that. And then any personal challenge you may have had. As I mentioned, some of my students have talked about really difficult topics, but again, can you talk about how you overcame it, how it shaped you, rather than just the challenge itself? You can look back at your resume if you don't remember, and you can also ask your parents. Sometimes parents have some good ideas about that. So then again, I would focus like free write for 30 to 60 minutes on one prompt. For this challenge, I think 15 to 20 should be fine. You don't have to have a dramatic topic to stand out. It's really about the authenticity and the, I'd say the ingenuity behind what you're saying rather than exactly what the experience is. It doesn't have to be something really big to be impressive. And then don't just brag again, don't just go on about your accomplishments. Make sure to add something new that wouldn't be obvious from your activity list or from your resume. And then just review what you wrote after you write it tonight. So write for 15 to 20 minutes, review it, and see what happens. And then again, remember these character traits. And this is sort of above and beyond, so this would be next level. You don't have to worry about it for tonight, but just think about when you're looking at your college list and you're thinking about what are the values that that institution has and how do I match up? Is there a story I can tell that might match up with the values that the college I want to go to is espousing? Can I pick a story that matches? So look at the colleges on your list and perhaps your first choice one, and look at a little on their website and their mission statement, their motto, and what are they really sharing that could help give you some clues as to what kind of story might be most attractive to this college. And then again, I promised to tell you a little bit about the Business Insider analysis we did of this essay. So I do recommend looking up this young lady, Brittany Stinson, look up Business Insider, and our comments are on that essay. So the assignment is, again, finish the free writing and send it by tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific. This is designed to be just like a quick on your feet challenge. So there's a website you can go to, and I've given the link also to your program leaders with a recap of what we talked about today. So you can send your free writing here, and then what will happen tomorrow is I will pick a few to share, and I'll give you some real-time feedback and give you some additional tips on how you can improve your essays going forward. And I try to choose different topics so that people can benefit from different perspectives. So this should be really fun sharing exercise. So I actually did run on time, so I have a few minutes. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you or hear any feedback on how your experience free writing was during the session. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Aviva. That was super informative, I think even for me. So that's great. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Yeah, see, we have one. This usually happens.
Oh, great. Okay, great. What are some?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I see them. Great. What are some of the more typical common apps you receive, and is not having uniqueness a bad thing? I don't know if I quite understand the question, but let me try to interpret it in the way that I think. And if I didn't interpret it right, just follow up to clarify with me. So what are the more typical? So I think students, as I mentioned in terms of the tips, those are some common mistakes or common blunders that I see in the Common App essay, where students aren't talking about something that's very personal important, or they might be getting too bogged down in the drama of the story and not enough on how they overcame whatever the challenge is. And I think some people feel like, well, I'm not that unique. I'm very similar to other people in my school. And my answer to that is there's always something that's different about you compared to other people. You know, this is why writing solo, why I gave you some quiet time to write, is important. It's really important you try to do these essays outside of the influence of other people, at least in your initial drafts, so you can really ask yourself these hard questions about who you are, what you want, because ultimately that's what colleges want to understand when they're evaluating you. And so if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you want, then that is where I think people get into the challenge of how do they make themselves unique, because they don't take time to think about those things. And I think we all continue learning about ourselves, but you know something about yourself, you know something about what you want. So how can you take that information and make it attractive and interesting for college to read? And if you look back at this presentation, I've given you some ideas about what colleges are looking for and what are some common mistakes. Do AP exam scores really matter? Not too much. So depending on what colleges you're applying for the top tier colleges, you pretty much should just self-report the 5s. I wouldn't self-report the 4s unless they are in a subject that's less relevant to your interest. With all of the challenges that the AP exams posed this year, with some students being unable to complete, they were online, they weren't typically done. The scores are not going to be taken really seriously this year. So if you weren't happy with your scores, I'd say don't worry about it, just don't report them. And the colleges aren't going to ask for a score report on the APs, it's all self-reported. So you can choose to self-report the scores that are favorable to you. And if you don't want to report any, that's fine. If you want to report just a couple or one, that's totally fine. Where do we submit the writing challenge for tomorrow? So let me put that in the link in the chat box for everybody. So you should get an email about this, but here's the link, essay submit, ivyinsight.com/essay-submission. So got a couple more questions, and please stop me when we're out of time, Brianna and Jesse. So how much weight does a college essay hold compared to other aspects? So I would say the college essay is a really important piece of getting the admissions officer to like you. So I can't weigh it necessarily against any other material because it serves a completely different purpose. Whatever your essay espouses, I would suggest that you share these essays, and this is why I think it's really important for you to do these early, share them with your recommenders so they understand what you're writing about and they can corroborate the kinds of stories that you're sharing. So when an application is evaluated, they're looking for cohesion, meaning they want to know that all the pieces are lining up. They don't want your essay to demonstrate something completely different than what's on your recommendation letters than what's on your activity list, but it can help to enhance and bring together the entire narrative that you're presenting in that application. If I have to choose, I do think what you do is more important than what you say. However, in the application, you have to demonstrate that in an effective way using your words. So what you say and what you do in the application are really linked. So also make sure the activity list is very clear and impactful for whoever reads it. How important are SAT, ACT scores? Not very important this year. And in fact, I saw a statistic, something like 2/3 of students don't even have scores. So if you have SAT or ACT scores and they're really, really good, that can give you a slight advantage over other people who don't have scores. But if you don't have any scores, you don't have to worry about it. If you took the test once and you bombed it or you didn't do as well, just don't send this year. They're not going to be held to high degree in this year. However, next year could be different. I know a lot of juniors, rising juniors who are currently preparing for these tests. As a sophomore, what could I do for the next 2 years to help me achieve my goal of getting into a good university? So I would say that you should focus on doing things like you're doing in BlueStamp. So projects that enable you to explore and express your interests. So you have a chance to do something that's impactful and meaningful that helps you learn about yourself, helps you learn about what you like. And I would say you should also document very carefully the kinds of things you're doing in this program and in other programs and endeavors in which you might be involved, because when you go to report this information, it's going to be hard to remember, 2 years ago, what was that project about? Who did I work with? So document as a sophomore. So when you've been through a life as it goes over the next year and a half, you're going to have a really good backlog of information. Is it true that students are compared within their own school? Yes. So whoever you go to school with, that is your most relevant applicant pool. I think we're just about out of time. So I want to say thank you to everybody for having me, and please submit tonight. I'd love to have a chance to review and support you in creating your essays.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys learned a lot and you do this assignment. There are a couple questions that came in afterwards, so I might email them to you if that's okay.
Sure, we can address them tomorrow.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, submit by 8 a.m. Pacific.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.